call the meeting to order. Do we do a roll call?
Yeah, I'll do one, sure.
Yeah.
Blackburn,
Present.
Hageman,
Here.
Hedge,
Here.
Howard,
Here.
Craybill,
Here.
Jones,
Present.
Mashigian. Kathy emailed me earlier today, said that she was not going to be able to make it, so we will conduct without Kathy here today.
Okay. I just want to remind everybody to please silence your cell phones, and this meeting is being videotaped. So anything that you say at the podium will be part of that video, and it will be available on our website later. Next is public comment on items not on the published agenda. Any comments? Seeing none, we're going to move to the draft agenda for our Monday meeting. There's no voting or approving of this. We just included it on the agenda so that everybody has it ahead of time. If there's any questions or comments on it, we can take those at this time. Yes.
I have a question, and that is, are we planning on voting on road proposals at that meeting? I thought we would be.
It's quite possible, yeah.
Okay, so that's not,
It's just a draft, Kurt.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
sorry.
all right.
It's
I
just a
guess-
draft,
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll see where we end up tonight.
Right, I just didn't want to put the cart before the horse.
Okay.
Next is the discussion for the roads project advisory, well, including the road project advisory committee. I did ask Ken to have our HRC representatives here today, Brad Shepler and Bill West. Thank you for coming. So they are available for any questions that we might have after everybody's had a chance to look through everything. I do want to remind everybody, before we begin, we do have this amazing packet that our project advisory committee has come up with, but we don't have to do any of the proposals in here. We can do some of them, part of one, mix them, none of them, a mix of all. So I do want to make sure that we are keeping an open mind, that there are other options potentially, and if anybody has come up with another option, to please feel free tonight to talk about that and share that. We don't have to stick just to this. I also wanted to just mention that we get this magazine from the MML, and in here, timing, it's breaking down Michigan's road funding needs. A lot of this doesn't pertain to us because they're talking about state roads, but I just wanted to read part of this last sentence in here. Federal funding set to dry up within the next year, and each year of pavement age compounding maintenance costs. It is clear that Michiganders need to be willing to try something new. When it comes to funding our roads, inaction may be the costliest option of all. So everybody's in the same boat, I guess, is what I'm saying. The state, as well as all local governments, everybody is in this predicament of how to maintain and pay for roads. So we're not alone. And I just wanted to sort of say that to kick off the subject, I guess. Just that we're not alone, but we will get through it. The way I was thinking we could go through this is, first, well, wait, let me back up. We also included in here a memo that came from one of the advisory committee members. It wasn't included in the packet because it's not an official proposal. It wasn't voted on to be an official proposal, but there's some really good information in there. And so that is included in your packet, and I hope everybody read that. And if anybody wants to discuss any of those points, please feel free to bring those up tonight. I thought the best way to do this would be to sort of go through the proposals, and if there's something that we feel is just not an option, just not going to work for us. I would like to sort of put that on the back burner for tonight. That doesn't mean it can't be brought back up at a later date, but if we all feel that something is just not right for us, I think it's easiest to just get that off the table right away. So the first proposal is status quo. Basically, do nothing. Sort of just stay where we're at and keep doing what we're doing and maintain status quo. I don't particularly think this is an option for us, myself, because the roads are going to continue to deteriorate and get worse. And we've come so far and invested so much money and so much time. Up to this point, I feel like it wouldn't be the best use of time or dollars, but I'm open for any discussion on that. Does anybody feel differently?
I tend to agree that doing nothing is not the right move, so let's table that one.
Do you have anything to say about that? Anybody have anything to say?
This isn't really status quo, but since I am the fire commission representative, I met with Tony, and then I also, at the meeting on Monday, and again, when we're talking roads, I just hope that whatever decision we make, we continue thinking of public service, whether it be the police and the fire. Because I think after the fire on off of 13 Mile the other night, that was a pretty big fire. And then the other thing that I have a concern about, and again, I don't know if it's appropriate for here, but it might be for you guys. When I walk, it seems like so many of the, what I'll call the drainage areas, like especially on Bingham Lane, they're all just like full of grass, and a lot of the pipes have like stones in front of them, and so I'm just wondering, is that something that's going to be fixed, or is it included in your all of the entire repair, or?
There's drainage improvements included in the scopes of work for each of the routes.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
and to various degrees.
Okay.
So the type of ditch maintenance that you're referring to is absolutely part of what would be in the scope of work on.
It is, I'm sorry.
I said the type of ditch maintenance you're referring to is absolutely the type of things that would be in the scope of work for any project that happens in the village.
Okay. And then is there a way to keep it that it doesn't get overgrown again?
You could fertilize it with
I don't know how
Roundup.
long it's taken for it to get overgrown, but there's a lot of them that there's no way the water could be.
So that's maintenance, and that can either fall on the village, if they have the ability to pay for and do that, or the property owner that abuts to it. Those are the two ways that can get maintained. So I don't know if right now the village does the village do any ditch maintenance on their roads? Is that part of your?
It's minimal.
So,
We really,
Certainly not mowing.
yeah.
no. It really is, and would be reiterated if we made it all fresh and clean and new, that, the hope is that the homeowners would maintain that. I mean, yeah, like you said, on some of them, people put rocks, or the grass is totally grown over it, you can't even see the tube anymore. That's all inhibiting the proper flow of water.
So do you find standing water a lot? Is that the issue, or is it more of an aesthetic issue?
Well, I usually don't walk if it's if it's raining, so I don't see standing water, because the water tends to go away quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more just like the fact that, is there standing water, or how does the water get through? There's one house in particular on Bingham Lane, and it might be where they're building the new one. It would be on the left as you're heading south, and it's like totally overgrown, and there's a big huge rock in front of the pipe. So
hopefully that would all be addressed when the road was maintained or fixed. And, because I know in Bristol Lane, there's standing water a lot.
Yeah, and those are things that we would, when we get into the detailed design, we would find those locations. Is that if water goes away between 24 and 48 hours, it's technically what a ditch is supposed to do. It's supposed to hold it for a little bit, infiltrate it, and finally drain. If it gets beyond that, then it's a standing water problem. It's a mosquito breeding ground. Those are areas that need to be corrected.
Okay.
So those are the things that we would look for during the detailed design.
One of the reasons that the magnitude of our estimated rehab for Bristol Lane is greater than that of some of the other routes is the magnitude of the drainage improvements and soil improvements in order to pave the roads. It's just going to be greater there.
Okay.
Just due to everybody knows there's a bunch of standing water there. It's going to cost money to resolve that to go that way.
Can I ask our consultants, my impression is that waiting 5 years, to do something about this is not a good idea, as well as
No.
what everybody else is saying. Would you agree to that? I mean, from just the financial perspective, it's going to be much more expensive if we wait 5 more years. We're not going to be, and I guess I'm looking more towards like the roads themselves. Another 5 years is going to be.
The roads in the village are closer to the end of their service lives than the beginning. And the deterioration curve at the end of your service life has a steeper decline in terms of how much more service life you have at the end of the life, and at the end of your service life, the amount of money it costs to resolve the problems that you have is more expensive than it is early in the service life. So you're right that waiting is just going to make the problem more significant than it is now.
Yeah, and we are asset managers, so do nothing is never a principle of asset management.
To a hammer, every problem is a nail.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in agreement with
Yeah.
the two prior speakers, and I just don't see that it makes sense for the village to wait.
Oh, no. Question for you guys, though. In your estimation, are we better off working on Bristol Lane or Bingham Road first? It sounds like it's more Bristol Lane than it would be Bingham Road.
Well, we've always said that you should work on the offshoot roads first.
I understand that,
So
yeah.
work your way
Right.
from out to in.
The tributaries into it, yeah.
Exactly. So whether you go north of 13 first or south of 13 first,
But it sounds as though south of 13 may need more work than north of 13.
agreed.
Okay.
But
And therefore it costs a little bit more.
Depends on which recommendation you go for. If you want to do something less on Bristol Lane, I would say you'd want to do that first.
I agree.
But if you're gonna do the longer term rehabilitation, it really doesn't matter when you do it. So I would almost do.
Yeah, a better decision is going to be how that work will be sequenced in with the routes that connect to it and
Yeah.
around it.
Yeah, that part is it. You got to do the tributaries before you can do the main road. Right.
So, like Bill said, you have your curve at the bottom there as you deteriorate. The ones on Bristol are kind of they're nearing the end where you can wait a couple of years. It's not going to get considerably worse than it is. Whereas if you're up here on your curve, the longer you wait, the more you deteriorate. So you want to catch those roads, whether in that fair or the high side of the poor rating
Yeah,
first.
it just seems that Bristol Lane just drains much worse than, or in that whole area, south, let's call it south 13, seems to drain far worse than anywhere else.
And you want to get
So-
you want to get the good roads before they deteriorate, because if you wait,
Oh,
3
okay, I
years,
see what you, okay.
3 years
All right.
before you do Bingham Lane, we have recommended a surface seal right now. Well, if you wait 3 or 4 years, because later the surface seal may not work anymore, you may need to do an overlay, which then costs you, a bunch more.
All right.
It's
Added on to the 4%, So you want to get those roads. I would almost try and do the ones that you can do the slurry seal or the surface seal or the cape seal first. Get them done first.
just freeze the
Okay.
condition.
That is my
Because
strong
once they're bad, they're
recommendation.
not going to get that much worse, but it's getting to that point
Yes.
could be
If a
faster.
route is shot this year, everyone will also think it's shot next year. But the roads that are in better condition, that you have a chance to efficiently use your money to improve the condition, that should be the priority rather than
Okay.
something that's in the worst
I don't know
condition.
if we need to worry about that tonight, but yeah, it's, okay.
If you start from the bottom of a hole, you're never going to be able to dig your way out of it. We want the attacking the network from the top, from a condition point of view, is the way to use your money the most effectively.
Okay, all good information. Okay, so at this point for tonight, we are going to do nothing off the table.
Agreed.
Okay. Next is Proposal 2, which is titled the Road Maintenance Option. Somebody want to speak to this one?
Well, to me, that it's very similar to one. It doesn't, the only difference between status quo and this one is that we would start using the $150,000 that we set aside each year to do a road maintenance plan that's more vigorous than what we have already, that we've been doing in the past. And I believe our experts said that that's really only feasible on, no, not feasible, but you only get the biggest bang for your buck for that kind of program on roads that are already in decent
shape, yeah.
condition. And we don't really have that many roads. In fact, really only the 2 concrete roads. So,
Right.
To me, if we're taking 1 off the table, we would take 2 off the table as well. Because 2 is like no new roads. It's just putting money towards maintaining
Right,
what we
you get a
have.
hole here, fill that, you got, yeah.
Right.
And depleting our savings.
And yes.
And no recourse for adding new savings for the inevitable down the way.
The way it was drafted, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of that.
Either.
Does anybody feel differently? Okay, so for tonight, we're going to take Proposal 2 off the table. Proposal 3 is titled Revised Alternative to HRC Selective Short and Long-Term Rehabilitation. I think as we get more complicated, it would probably be helpful for our 2 liaisons to speak to the, sort of put this all into simpler terms for us.
If I recall, it was in guys talking to you guys. I think you were one of them that talked to you. Do you want to take it from there then? Because you know a little bit better than I do. The idea that we don't go full-blown, but we certainly go back and maintain that, or as you guys said, chip seal, slurry, and so forth.
Sure. Proposal 3, by one of the committee members, the big issue here, which is I think really probably the most critical issue we have to decide, is whether we're going to do a selective short-term rehab of Bristol Road and its courts, or the longer-term rehab that was recommended by our consultants. Okay, and to me, that's like one of the very, very key points that we have to resolve. Proposal 3 is based on not doing the long-term rehab for Bristol Road or Bristol Courts, and we almost need Jim here to explain his rationale.
Yeah.
One of the rationales, however, is that it is much, much cheaper. To the point where doing the long-term rehab on those roads is going to be much more pain for everybody.
Right.
So that's like number one reason. The number two reason is, I think, is if I have his rationale correct, is that, and this was actually something I wanted to ask you guys. You know, this road has lasted 20 years. The soil has been the soil for 20 years. So, you know, why, if that's the case, why wouldn't it work if we redid it for another 20 years?
I drove Bristol Lane today, and I'm not sure what part of the road you're referring to has been 20 years old. It's almost all patches. I think it's not necessarily correct to say that 20 years ago there was a resurfacing done and then nothing's happened since then, because that route is nothing but patches. And like I was referring to before, the reasoning for the higher on a dollar per foot basis unit cost for our estimated rehab on that route is it's really flat, and the condition of the pavement and the thickness of the pavement kind of has us painted into a corner as far as there's a lot of the cheaper options aren't going to be available. And part of what I do on these road projects is size up what the soil conditions are and the existing pavement conditions, and look at what some of the variable costs are going to be, like for the drainage improvements and for the soil improvements that allow us to build the roads. It's going to be more expensive to do essentially anything there. And there's the reason the dollars look so artificially high or atypically high on that route is I see nothing but the expensive red flags as far as when we get into construction, there's going to be got to do this, got to do this, got to do that type of items that just are going to cost money. And if you open up the Pandora's box of starting to do the work, these costs are going to be there. And that's what I was trying to set up in that estimate and in that scope of work.
I think that's one of the points that Jim had was that Bingham Road and Bristol Lane were both resurfaced around the same time.
Yep.
And they're both in similar conditions now. So why is it Bristol? I don't have traffic counts, but I would just assume that Bingham Road gets much more traffic than Bristol Lane. I would think.
How could it not?
So that's it's handling a lot more traffic than Bristol Lane, and it's lasting about the same. So there, you could say that the actual road of Bristol Lane is not keeping up with Bingham Road, because Bingham Road sees a lot more traffic. If Bristol Lane saw that amount of traffic, it might be a different story. I didn't go and count the patches on each to see which one, but I know Bingham Road's been patched as well as the patching programs. It comes down to the soils. Could you do something similar to what we proposed on Bingham Road to Bristol Lane? Yes, you could. Are you going to get as much life as you get out of the Bingham Road improvement? You might. At some point, though, I think everyone's realized that there's issues on Bristol Lane. It's the one road that everyone seems to point at. Well, yeah, we got the drainage here, we got this on Bristol Lane. You're not going to fix that if you just continue to do what you can do on some of the other roads. So it's whether or not if you want to fix it or you don't want to fix it. If you don't want to fix it, by all means, it's the village's money and they want to spend it most effectively. But at some point, it's just going down the road. You're going to have to fix something at some point, I feel.
Well, is it possible that the soil got worse over the 20 years? I mean, it seems to me like if the soil is like underneath, it wouldn't get worse. But I don't know. Am I wrong on that?
It just is. On Bingham, the thickness of the existing, even though the conditions from the surface essentially look the same in those two routes, the asphalt thickness is greater on Bingham, and the quality of the subsoils, like the base material underneath the asphalt, it's thicker and better, and the quality of the soils underneath that are better. I mean, it is, while they look alike, how each of those routes got to that current pavement condition is completely different. That's a Bingham is. It's a better road that's got more capabilities, and it just saw a ton more traffic. And after the same amount of time and similar maintenance, we're in the same or similar conditions from a what does the pavement look like point of view. But they're not similar as far as what are options going forward and what the costs are going to be for those options going forward.
Is there drainage under the road and drainage in the ditch? Are there two different, when we say drainage?
I don't believe there's any drainage under, well, there's a little bit on Bingham. There's some pipes on Bingham as you get towards the bridge that we saw were put in. They were improvements that were added after, like in the, I want to say 90s, late 90s or so. Bristol, there was a culvert, I was looking through the plans, there was a culvert that was put in midway down Bristol Lane through some private property to help the drainage. But other than that, I don't know if there's more than just driveway culverts and ditches.
So would drainage be added under the roads? Do you do that?
That was an option to put under drain to drain those subsoils, but we still have to discharge it somewhere, so you have to figure out where that needs to go
Right.
as well. But yes, that was one of the improvements and why it's more expensive.
Right.
Because that was one of the improvements.
And that'll help that subsoil in the long term to get that water out
That's the
of
point.
it.
That's the, yeah.
And then to the ditches and the ditches out.
It'll dry up the ditches, it'll suck the water from the subsoils essentially, because again, it's clay, it drains laterally, not down. So we want to intercept those clay layers, get the water into there and out.
And again, to hammer every problem's a nail, the best money spent on road rehab projects is on the drainage. I mean, the drainage improvements, from the money you spend on it to benefit you get from it, they're some of the best money you can spend.
Just not the aesthetic, unfortunately.
Right. It's like
Yeah, nobody
getting a new
sees it,
furnace.
that's the
You don't
problem.
see it,
Yeah.
right?
Welcome to our world.
Right.
I
Right.
see 3/4 of the things we do.
Does anybody have anything else? I mean, I feel like this is something that we still
Well,
talk about.
what I've been thinking about for a while now is kind of a combination of 2, 3, and maybe possibly 4. And that being that you take 2 because now that's a yearly maintenance going on all the time. You take 4, and 4 all adds a $2 million loan, or $2 million loan over X amount of time. Then we combine that with the monies that we have, take either Bingham Lane or Bristol, dump money into that. No, I shouldn't say that, but put money into that, get those roads cooking. Now, as we go on, and I would also then propose that we do a millage increase to then add monies to then create enough money then to go back and finish the other roads. As we collect the money, it's here. Hey guys, how about it? Here, we got this much money. If we want to do this, okay, it's going to cost, let's do it. That kind of idea. So therefore, it's kind of an ongoing thing. I don't think this is ever going to stop, because we know in 20 years we got to do it all over again. So this way then would create a way to keep it going. Now, we could always drop the millage as we get monies going in. Therefore, we've got it covered. What I didn't like about proposal, I think it's either 4 or 5, in going to a special assessment. I would rather, again, we're a part of a village, we all live here, we work here, so forth, so I would rather not do that. I'd rather add some mills, do it that way, and if we get off from under, fine. We can always cut back the millage rate. And again, we pay 9 mills. I think we're the 3rd lowest in the entire county as far as millage goes. Thanks for you guys putting that together and the proposal you guys had. I appreciate that. This is what's been filtering in my mind all these days, and listening to what all the proposals everybody made, and they were all terrific. But it's almost like a Chinese menu. One from column A, one from column B, one from column C, one from column D kind of idea. And that's what I loved about having all these proposals in there.
My thinking is that if we put anything up for a vote, we should know it's going to pass, or it has the best chance of passing. And with the split in our voter roster between private road dwellers and public road dwellers, it's really going to be a tight call,
Yeah.
a real tight call.
But we don't have to go for a vote for that.
Well, that's, I've heard Lisa say on multiple occasions that you don't want to do a millage increase just
If
because
we
we
can-
could.
This isn't because we could.
I don't
This is
want
the-
to,
yeah.
but we may have
may
to.
have to. I mean,
We might
as
have
you guys
to.
said, and what this article is saying, get it done.
I mean, that's not, going to a vote or not going to a vote isn't off the table. We haven't
Yeah.
really talked about it yet. I mean, I would say I did say that, and I still feel that way. But after all of the research that's been done by the committee, the whole point was to get input from the residents, and we've done that. So, it just, if we can do it through a millage, I would say that's still an option.
I would say that if we impose a millage increase without a vote, and we do not do a special assessment, you get yourself, I think, some really bad PR in the community going on behalf of the private road dwellers.
And I would agree with you, but I would also say if we do a special assessment, then it's the opposite. Like, you have the other half of the people saying, why should I have to pay more?
Yeah.
So either way, we're going to have half of the people are not going to be happy.
Yeah.
So that's why we're trying to come to something where nobody's going to be happy. Let me just say that. Nobody wants to be spending their money on roads. So I don't, nobody's going to be like excited about this one way or the other. It's just we need to try to come to an agreement to where it's like a negotiation, right? Nobody leaves 100% happy,
Yeah.
but nobody leaves 100% upset either.
Yeah, but if you
Yeah.
don't include private road people, you're not really negotiating.
That's right.
If you don't give them an option to vote or not vote or have a say, what is it, 51 or 52%?
It's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
And then my counter to that is everybody that works and lives and so forth on Telegraph Road, not only are they paying the same taxes we do, they're also paying a special assessment for extra police protection. They don't get anything out of this. So that's why I'm suggesting we are a village, we live here, and therefore we all have to take responsibility for it.
Well, and about 30% of our taxes do come from the commercial district. So if we go special assessment,
And they already pay a special assessment for,
you're
Yeah.
just wiping out that 30%.
yeah.
That's going to, help pay for it.
The size of the special assessment, when you take the actual dollars for a homeowner being $500, nothing, other than a statement that, yes, we recognize that you folks can drive directly onto this new road and we'll never come anywhere near it. And so therefore, you get a more direct benefit from this new road in front of your house than we will.
Yeah,
So-
again, the only problem with that is now it's 70-30. So 70% of that coverage would be on the SAD guys, whereas only 30% on everybody else. If that's the way we decide to go, I would like to see it more 50-50.
50/50, meaning the 70/30 was 30% on the special assessment district.
No, 70% on the special assessment, 30% on taxes. Whereas you then make it 50-50, so instead of being 500 a household, maybe you're talking 200 to 250 a household per year, of which that doesn't come off your taxes as a millage rate would.
Is that, I'm just trying to understand your figures, is that?
I'm not a mathematician, so I'm.
Does that include the fact that the $2.7 million, which we already have, is taxes on everybody?
Yeah. Yeah, so that includes everything that we have, and I think.
I guess what I'm saying is, you're starting with $2.7 million that everybody got taxed for to raise.
Up-
Then you're
up to this point,
adding
yeah.
the millage, the 1 point mills.
Whatever we do,
which
yeah.
everybody would be taxed on.
Correct.
It doesn't seem to me like it's 70-30, but I'm not a mathematician.
It's not in my mind either,
Yeah.
not at all.
I just want to go back to the, because, I mean, this is, I mean, the special assessment is a question, and the whole vote on tax or
Yeah.
or not vote on tax is another question, but the one, to my mind, that we have to like decide first is full rehab or selective rehab for Bristol Road, because that's like about a $2.4 million difference. And for example, Proposal 3 and Proposal 4 are related.
Yep.
Proposal 3 is with the selective rehab, and it includes a 1 mil property tax increase for 11 years.
Mhm.
Proposal 4, which is the full rehab, requires a 2.1 mil
Right.
increase for 12 years. It's like, it doubles
Yeah.
Yeah.
the additional tax
Right.
burden on people, and that, you know, that's a big difference.
It is.
You know, I mean, that's a big difference. And I'll just tell you right now, I am not voting to raise people's taxes 2.1 in a council meeting. I'm not doing that. I would vote against that no matter what else is going on. If we're gonna do that much of an increase, you know, it ought to be on the ballot, in my opinion. That's one vote. But to me, like, the key question is selective, short-term, or long-term, because it totally changes the
What we do.
math. It totally changes the hurt that people are gonna incur in this. And I'm not sitting here telling you that I have a great answer to it, because I don't know. You know, I don't know what's best for the village. I really don't.
But we do know we got to do something. So,
But we do know we have to do something.
Griffin,
yeah.
the difference between those two, it held Bristol Lane constant, right, in those two. That change in long-term versus short-term was only the impact of Bristol Lane.
Bristol Lane and the 3 courts.
And the 3 courts.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bingham Lane was held constant, if I remember right. Both
Pretty much, yeah.
more or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one thing I've just been thinking about, and, you know, I could be totally wet on this, I'm just throwing it out there, is, because I'm not you know, I can't predict the future. What if we had the proposal be selective rehab for those 3 courts, but said, if the residents on those 3 roads felt that they wanted to do the long-term rehab and wanted to pay the difference, we would do that.
I don't think you'd get a very good reply to that. I don't know, but
How would you,
you'd have to poll the people.
at a previous meeting, we talked about a special assessment district where you would only do it if you had, buy-in from 51% of the people in the proposed special assessment district. I think we talked about that with our
Right.
attorney. How do you do that? Like, do you?
There are 2 ways to do it, as I recall. The first way is that the residents themselves can bring a proposal. And for them to bring the proposal, they have to have 51% of the people in the special assessment district have to sign on to it. Okay, and the second way would be that the council could do a special assessment, could start the process and could do the special assessment district by ourselves. And I'm not in any way suggesting that I think we should do a special assessment district and require the people on Bristol Road or the courts to pay the difference between the long-term and the short-term. That's for the same reason I don't plan on voting for a 2 mil increase. I think that, they ought to, if they wanted to do that, it should come from them, not us jamming it down on them. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
When you look at Proposal 5A and 5B, they're really Proposal 3 and 4
With the special
So the
assessment.
special
with the special assessment.
Right.
So the issues are really Bristol Lane, full rehab or partial? Special assessment, yes or no?
Correct. And then,
And that's the bottom line.
and to me, the last one would be tax increase voted by the council or voted by the people.
Which for me, the answer might be different depending on the size of it, because I think there's some level that we as a council should make the best decision for the village and move on. I would be more in your camp if it were a larger one that we should be asking the voters, but if it's a mill increase, if that's where we ended up after deciding the first two things, then I would be voting for that, not to go to the ballot.
Well, let me just explain a little bit of my reason why I think it should go on the ballot. I just generally hate tax increases. Just to start with, the vote that I regret most in my 6+ years on this council was back when I was brand new and there was a proposal to raise the rate, the millage rate from 8.4 to 8.8%. And I, being brand new, and everybody else was voting for it, I voted for it, okay? And I regret that ever since because I don't know that I really knew enough about it. And then a couple years later, they wanted to go from 8.8% to 9%. And that passed 6-1. I was the one. Okay, so I generally don't like tax increases. Now, in the 6.5 years since that time, I do not remember one time when the village council voted to decrease the millage rate. I don't remember one time when the village council even discussed decreasing the millage rate, all of which is a long way of saying if you do it, it's unlikely that it's ever going to go back down. Okay? And if you just have the council vote to increase it by 1 mil or 2 mils or whatever it is, to my way of thinking, it can get eaten up in other things. If you just have a general 2 mil increase, who's to say, the fire department might have something in the next year, well, we'll take part of that 2 mils and do that, deal with the fire department. My theory of a ballot proposal is that you would say, for 8 years, or whatever it is, you're going to have an X mil increase. And it's going to go to roads. And that way it would ensure, number one, goes to roads and doesn't get eaten up by anything else. And number two, at the end of 8 years, somebody, not me, but somebody is going to have to re-vote on it again. Or the council's going to have to re-vote on it. So
I don't just,
Go ahead,
I
yeah.
don't know. I agree with most of what you said. I would put an asterisk on it, though, that sometimes I'm afraid we're going to have to be, for lack of a better term, the adults in the room and get this done, because the cost of not getting it done will be higher than getting it done. And that's the only pause I have to bring out for a vote, because I think that we have to truly do what's in the best interest of the village, even though we're going to have likely half of the residents either way think that it's not in the best interest of the village. And they can hold a referendum when my term's up or yours or whoever else votes for it and flush us out and do whatever they want. But I think while in this seat, we have to keep that in our mind, of doing the right thing as quick as we can before it gets further out of hand. But I don't say that in spite of what you said. It's more in support.
Yeah.
I think that I would be very hesitant to. Could we? And these are just questions. I hope it's okay.
Yeah.
We as a council could institute a millage rate for a fixed period of time, only for roads, right? Is that true, or does that have to be?
For a fixed amount of time?
Like, say, a road millage for 8 years at 1 mill.
I don't think you can tie the hands of the future council like that.
So if you raise the millage outside of a ballot, it just goes in the general millage.
Knowing that you could always reduce it, yes, like Kurt said, although it's unlikely.
But if we
Probably.
put it out for a vote, it could be for something specific.
If you put it on a ballot, yes, specific amount of time. And that's why, sorry, let me turn this on. That's why you see on a ballot from time to time, a smart millage renewal. There's a certain amount, and it was good for 7 or 8 years, and then there's a renewal request. Oftentimes, it's about the same amount. Not always, of course, but that's why there's renewals from time to time on a ballot. There's a time limit, and then when it's up for renewal, it either goes away or they seek approval from voters for that renewal.
Because I might change my earlier statement that I would be likely to vote for something lower, because I think it's important that if we raise the millage, that it be specific to the roads and for a fixed period of time. If that can only be done through a ballot, then I guess I would change my thought, and I think we should do it through a ballot, but I guess I thought.
I see what you're saying, okay.
Yeah, because.
That we could just raise it, that money can be used for anything, but if you do it as a ballot, and it's specifically for that, it can't be used for anything else.
Yeah, because to Kurt's earlier comment that it's going to, over time, you're right, the fire's going to come and need more. Instead of cutting or going out and getting a fire millage, it's going to get pulled in. I think what we do for the roads should be specific to the roads, and I guess I think we should just make sure with the attorney, and I assume he'll be here Monday.
Yes, he will.
But because I would be in favor of doing it as a council if it wasn't a high amount and it could be for a fixed period of time and for just the roads. If that has to be done through a ballot, then I would be on the side of doing it through a ballot.
Sure, we should ask our attorney, but I think Ken's right. I don't think you can tie the hands of the future council.
By it.
Right. And
I mean, they could turn, the next council, by the way, could turn, even if we put a 1 mil road in this council, they could turn around and raise the 9 to 10, and, so I guess I still thought you could the council could do a separate millage, like, I thought we could do a separate fire millage, as an example, as a council, so I'm not sure why we couldn't do a separate road millage.
Well, I mean, typically, historically, our village has never done villages tied to one project, but there are other, Franklin, for example, I think all of their villages tied to like specific things, like so much for fire, so much for library, so much for this, and other communities do it that way.
If I could say real quickly, I don't have it in front of me, of course, but the Franklin's Fire Millage is part of their charter.
Oh, is
It's
it?
dedicated in the charter. And other communities do have dedicated millages that go to the vote of the people for public safety, roads, beachfront rehabilitation, all kinds of different projects that are not paid through by, let's say, ratepayer fees. When I mean by that, I mean water fees or sewage fees or something of that nature. These are just paid by general funds.
Yeah.
Let me just bring to your point, Aaron, about stopping a millage. We are in a predicament now because we don't have enough saved to do the project when the project needs to be done. It's going to happen 15, 20 years from now that we're not going to have enough saved, especially if we do a selective we have now.
I both agree and disagree with that. Here's why. Because if we had, I would have objected to our current millage if we were sitting on $10 million. If the village was sitting on $10 million, I would have said we can't have 9 mills because we're just taking residents' money, sitting it in low, low performing investments, and so I don't think it's bad that we're going to pay for this over the next 10 years when the people living in the village are going to be using those roads. So we borrow a little bit of money, we pay for it over the next 10 years as we're using the roads. So I probably just conceptually would object to saving it all and doing it, because then the residents for the past 10 years are paying for the roads for the next 10 years.
Right.
In my mind, paying for it, we taking a small loan, paying for some of it out of savings, and taxing a little higher for the next 10 years to get the roads where they should be, I think at least conceptual to me makes more sense.
But I guess my point
But we'll be
is,
right there again in 10 years.
that's right.
Yes. But then those people for the next 10 years should pay for it.
Well, I'm hoping that as these guys say, you can get the roads to a certain point. We're up here, and we've just started the slide. If we can keep it at that point, and then we can go longer than, I mean, these roads have been around for what, 20 years, 25 years? So maybe we can let off a little bit. So let's say we do a millage for 8, 10 years, whatever it is. That stops, okay. Now we still throw in 150 a year, which we do right now anyway, plus Act 51. So that can start to accumulate too, then as you go on. Okay, maybe in 15 years it might have to. Again, will we be here?
But this is my point. I've lived in the village for 6 or 7 years now, and I've not paid $1 to these roads, but I've been using them for 6 years. I don't know that that's really fair. I mean, I enjoy it, but so to me, paying more
I'm not
as
sure
we're.
that's totally accurate, because of the $150,000 a year that we've been putting aside to the roads, you've been helping to.
I agree. It's a very small portion of what we're talking about, though.
Yeah, but I look at that as
Major
more maintenance.
rehab, right? I think you don't, that major rehab, like we're talking about, I don't mean to use the term in the report major rehab, but the big project we're doing, I think should be paid for by the people that are using those roads, living in the village over the next 10 years through, rather than, something in the past, or that to me matches the benefit of the roads with the
Yeah.
residents that are currently here.
yeah.
And that means that we're going to have to pay more for a certain amount of time.
And that's like what I like about your idea is that, okay, if we go to the vote, that whatever we do, that money is strictly used for these projects,
Right.
and not for anything else.
Right.
Well, and I agree with Aaron, since the subject came up. I have heard, kind of multiple times out in the community that we should have been collecting more money and we wouldn't be in this position. But I agree with Aaron that, people who haven't been here for 10 years, before that, they would have been paying toward this. And also, as has been discussed, all you need is to go into a recession, and then somebody, the residents will say, why are you sitting on $10 million? I can't even pay my bills. And I think there's even been lawsuits, you said, against municipalities for sort of just collecting money for maybe something in the future, sort of thing. You know what I mean? If we knew 20 years from now, we were going to be doing the roads in, June 20 years from now, and they were going to cost $21 million, and that was our goal, that's one thing. But at this point, nobody can predict what it's going to be in 20 years. So for us to just be collecting all of this money, like you said, from people that
I would
very well.
theoretically object to that. If you knew that 20 years we needed 20 million, I would say, don't take my money over the next 20 years. Tax the
Right.
people that are going to use the roads. Maybe I'm going to move in the 19th year. Why do I have to pay and all that? I mean, this is all
You're
theoretical.
right.
So I don't
But
mind.
just
I don't mind that.
as a different view of, people saying, well, you only have $3 million, or you haven't been collecting enough money. Well, we haven't been collecting enough money because we've kept our taxes really low for the people that are here now.
Right.
And we worked really, really hard to do that. If we were sitting on $10 million right now, we would not be sitting in a low
This would be done right now.
tax rate.
Am I-
Right,
We'd be telling these guys, go do
Right.
it.
And we wouldn't be at 9 mils, would be at
right.
11.
Probably.
And my counter to those people are that you're going to pay more the next 10 years because you're going to be driving on the new roads for the better roads for the next 10 years. That matches the cost with the usage, in my view. And we didn't take it from you before we needed it, but now we do. I argue our surpluses, and that's why I'm a fan of using the surplus we've been talking about, the 2.7 for the roads, because it's too much. I think it's too much that the village has. If our roads were perfect right now, I would have proposed in this last budget to significantly reduce it. I know we haven't really talked about a reduction because the road thing is always in our mind, but absent a road project, we don't need 9 mills.
Right, right.
We're sitting on too high of a surplus, in my view, absent the road project.
Right.
So that's why I'm supportive of using 2.7 to help offset that pain that residents are going to feel for the next 10 years.
And
That
it is-
said, it is fairly measured, what we're talking about. We're talking about 1 and 2 mills or 500 per lot or some things like that, where I think if you go to Bloomfield Village or other places that have SABs and things like that, they've done road projects, you're talking about 5 and 10 times these amounts.
Right.
It's funny you should mention that, because I did go to Bloomfield Township and sat down with their treasurer and their assessor. And apparently as a township, they're limited by law to charging 10 mills, and all 10 of their mills are used for like police and fire and stuff like that. So they have no millage available to do roads, and they're doing road projects. And while their roads are owned by Oakland County, they have set up like special assessment districts. And right now, the project they're doing is for Bloomfield Village. And each property owner was assessed between $42,000 and $48,000 to do their roads. And they can pay that amount all at once, or finance it over 15 years with the yearly amount being added to their regular property tax bill. And they historically do this only by a petition. You know, they have the people living on the road do a petition rather than the township council, because, as they said, they're elected positions and they want to get reelected. But one of their projects, they said, because they do it that way, it hasn't been the road. They say, and I find this hard to believe, they said it's like almost 60 years old that they're doing. But that's just a long way of saying that there are other people that are doing it totally by special assessment. And I'm not in favor of that, because, I don't want to drive anyone out of the village, to pay a $42,000, $48,000 per house fee. But I do think that it's fair to ask the people who are going to be using the roads to pay some amount. And that's why, although I am still open in terms of like how to do this, that's why I favor proposal 5. It's not like I like it, like I'm happy, about it, but as you said, I mean, it would be a combination, really. We've saved $2.7 million, and we would use that from past people, but it would also have the people that are using the roads in the future pay for the 1 mil increase plus the $500 a year special assessment, both of which, per that proposal, could be reduced in prior years, because that proposal has a surplus at the end of it. And if all of the assumptions, are met, if we get the grant that, we're assuming we can get, which is an if we get the loan, which we're assuming we can get, which is an if, we wouldn't have to do 500 for 10 years. It could be 500 for 8 years. And we wouldn't maybe have to do the millage for, 1 mil for 10 years or whatever it was. We could maybe do that 8 years. We could, because no matter what gets decided, hopefully at Monday's meeting, this is not going to be like something you can just like put aside and like not worry about it. The council is going to have to, over the next couple of years, come back to it several times to update it as the assumptions either turn out to be correct or not correct, and we get updated engineering reports and so on and so forth. So whatever we decide is, to me, is just going to have to be our best guess as to what the best thing to do now is, and future councils are going to have to decide, whether we were right or not.
Yeah, I think, in my view, we're kind of, Monday, I think we're trying to vote on what I would refer to as a framework.
Right.
And it's the framework for those 3 points that you mentioned, more or less. And because you're absolutely right, when they go out and actually get quotes, we'll see how good the estimate was, whether it's up or down, and hopefully we'll be on the good side of those as we go, and there'll be options to reduce it. But if we're just covering those 3 topics, I would love to get more feedback on what residents of Bristol Lane would like done, and if they'd be willing to pay for a portion of that increase. So maybe instead of 500, it's 750 or something in their SAD. Just personally, I think doing the more extensive rehab on Bristol Lane makes more sense, but I do think there has to be a sharing of a pain in it. And I do think that some level of SAD, unless our treasurer or legal counsel tell us that it's not worth the time, I do think that's at least a nod to the 50% of the residents in the village that live on private roads and have to pay, like myself, for our own rehab. I think that's the right balance. That's why I thought the proposal struck a good balance. It wasn't the $40,000 that you're talking about, but it was something that was more than trivial, but not overly burdensome.
Okay, hang on. Did you want to say something?
I had a couple of comments. Kurt, when you talk with Bloomfield Township people, did you discern whether it's just a rehab of a road, or it's paving a gravel road that's never been paved before?
No, it's repaving of a road, but I think that there was, I think that they're doing more like a long-term rehab, not the selective rehab.
Okay. Second.
There was soil issues and stuff like that.
Secondly, gentlemen, do you represent Bloomfield Township? Do you work in Bloomfield Township?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Maybe we could hear from them on that. And thirdly, just in defense and as an explanation of a past millage increase, related to what we've gotten from our consultants, sometimes they're just necessary because the cost of business goes up. It has been reflected in our consultants' reports. You can expect a 4% increase per year in road reconstruction in terms of labor costs and material costs. And in the past, that's kind of related to the whole ball of wax when it comes to running a government. So I realize that you don't like to raise taxes. Nobody does. But sometimes you just have to keep up with things. And a millage increase of 1/10 or 2/10 or 4/10 is probably sometimes necessary. Just keep that in mind.
Well, I agree with you. Having said that, when we talk about the millage rate, we talk about that as that's the only way that people's taxes get raised, and that's not accurate, because even if you keep the millage rate the same, the assessment values go up each year, and so you get a tax increase whether you increase the millage rate or not.
They do not go up every year. There was a recession a few years ago, and they went down quite significantly.
Okay.
So, I'm just saying that fluctuates.
All right. Okay.
I want to back up also to what was in the newsletter that was put together, because we're talking about 1 mil, 2 mil, 3 mil. So I would refer everybody back to page 5 of the newsletter. So I'm just going to talk about the average cost in the village. There's half the village average and twice the village average. But a 2 mil increase is, for the average home for the tax year 2023, for 2 mills would be $522.43. So, as everybody's tossing around, it's $500 for Bristol Lane. A 2 mil increase is only $500. It's not unreasonable, I don't think. So I just, sometimes it's hard, even when we're talking about the roads, people are talking millions of dollars, and it's just so overwhelming. But when you break it down over 10 years or over 15 years, if you do it right, it's reasonable. They're roads, they're expensive, they're part of living in a community.
Lisa,
So-
what was the average home price that that's based on?
So the taxable home value for 2023 was $261,215. So
So
that's
that's a half a
half.
mil, basically, is the street value.
Right.
Okay.
So
So that's
the taxable value,
it's on the low end of the
261,215.
average, the median.
I think that's the mathematic average, right?
That is the
That
That's
is the
average, not median.
Yeah.
It is the average taxable
Yeah.
value. Like that, I think our treasurer produced that number, right?
A lot of these homes have gone up a lot, and you're capped at what you
You're
can go
right.
per year, so.
Right, exactly.
If they were sold, I'm sure, if all the houses in Bingham were sold, I'm sure that average would be a lot higher.
Yes.
Yes. Probably double.
Right, but I just wanted to,
Let's get everyone to sell.
well, it's done that, right?
What's that?
I mean, the taxable.
That number, it's the state equalized value, which is half the value of your home, roughly.
Yeah.
That's why we said about
Yes.
half a
Although
mil.
if you owned the house, let's say, for 20 years, it may have increased, let's say, 7% a year, but there's a cap that can go up each year, so.
Yes,
to
that's
your
true.
point, if it was sold, the fair market value, I would argue, the fair market value, average fair market value in the village is over $500,000 because of that cap.
If a home is sold, then the cap comes off and it's reevaluated, and it usually it's a shock to the buyer.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a question on Proposal 5, when we're talking about the 2.7, having to do with Bingham Road being a major road, and the Act 51, that the road fund is actually only $842,000, and can only be used on Bingham Road. Can you explain?
That's not, I don't think that's totally accurate. I mentioned that to the gentleman who did this report, but Aaron, if you remember, we used to take the $150,000 and split it up and put $75,000 in the major road fund, $75,000 in the local road fund. And the Act 51 money that we get from the state are based on formulas, and there's a certain formula for the major road fund and a certain formula for the local road fund. And so those monies that have gone into those two accounts, the major road fund is Bingham Road. I'm pretty sure that I've been told before that there's a way we could get some of that money out of there, not all of it, but some of it, if we really
Yeah.
wanted to move a bunch of shells around and stuff like that. So I don't know that it's 100% locked in, but my understanding is that some of it is locked in, and that we could probably move some of it around if we had to. But he took it as not moving any of it around.
But all of it can't be moved, so there's some truth to this.
Yes,
Right.
yes. I don't think all of it can be.
2.7.
Don't think all of it can be used. I'm looking for.
So it's my understanding, and I can go back and check, but my understanding the way it works is if you have a roadway asset management plan that you submit to the, called TAMC, which is the Transportation Asset Management Council, then you can move monies within the major and local roads. If you do not have a roadway asset management plan, you're supposed to spend your major on your major, your local on your local. So
And we
Bingham
don't have
currently
plans.
does not have a roadway asset management
And
plan.
I'm not sure it really mattered anyway, because any rehab, any consideration we're doing on Bingham Road was over $800,000, I think, right?
Yes,
So it was only a matter of timing,
yes.
because
Yeah.
I think we're going to consume that. We just might consume it a little later, depending on how we order the two roads.
Okay.
Yeah.
one other thing I wanted to just bring up, because I've talked to a few people that live on Bristol who have approached me, is just so we can at least consider this, is they've said, you know, they want to do what the engineers recommend. So sticking with what the professionals are telling us to do. And do, you know, like the more extensive rehab. Like if we're gonna go through all of this and dig up the road and live with all of this, and we know the drainage is an issue, like if you're gonna do it right, or don't do it at all. Just let it go for a while.
Did any of them mention the interest in a special assessment district? Because I think that's good feedback, but.
The one person that did bring it up said they would, you know, that they would pay. And I did talk to our attorney after that conversation, and we can, like, okay, so we want to do Bristol Road. We're going to do Bristol in the courts. We can call just Bristol in the courts people to a meeting, and you can't take an official vote, but you could take like a straw vote. You could say, you know, do you want to do this or this? Do you want to do the smaller project or the bigger project? And, you know, just give them sort of a choice and ask if they would, you know, pay, would they be interested in a special assessment? So, like I said, you can't ask for an official vote or take a ballot or anything like that, but we could ask just that group to come in. Or, you know, just the next special assessment group or whatever, and ask sort of what direction do they want to go in. Because like I said, the people I've spoken to say either do it right or don't do it at all. I've spoken to several people who are concerned about the drainage issues and just want that to be done and fixed right, finally. You know, but of course, there's people I haven't heard from. There's people who probably don't even know there's a road project on the table. So, you know, just getting to those people and, you know, getting them to come in would be the...
Lisa, the amount of the special assessment between Proposal 5 and 5A, Proposal 5 has it at $500. 5A, which is the total fix, has it at $750. The other difference is Proposal A has 1 mil, Proposal 5A has 1.8 mil, and a third difference is Proposal 5.0 is 8 years and then 9 years. So there are 3 different changes by ways to raise enough money to do the Bristol Lane, basically, is the bottom line. How far are they willing to go on Bristol Lane? Would they take $1,000 special assessment, which could bring the millage down for everybody and benefit to the max the people who live on Bristol Lane?
That's a very good point, because that extra $250 is really everyone else paying for the additional work on Bristol, right?
Yes.
The SADs.
Yes, the way that's.
Because that's the only change between 5 and 5A, is that Bristol Lane gets the
Yes.
higher. So-
Yes.
Right.
Which may not be fair to the people on.
Making the Bristol go up, yeah. So
Yep.
that's
And I
a
think
very
that's
good point.
We need to know how far Bristol Lane folks will go.
Right, and the only way to know is to ask them. You know, I can't speak for people. I mean, I myself would think $1,000 a year is no big deal. Like, I mean,
It's not
for a new
1,000.
road.
It's not 1,000, it's 1,000
Well, plus your tax.
1,000.
So you're being double taxed, which is another
I wouldn't call it double
situation.
tax.
But,
But you're getting the best of all
Well-
worlds with drainage and road.
right,
You're getting,
But also
you're
there's-
obviously getting more benefit than the rest of the residents of the
Mhm.
village, because you're directly using the road generally daily.
It's basically a
Right.
private road, because you don't come out on another end. I mean, you go down Bristol Lane because you live down Bristol Lane. You're not passing through like you are on Bingham Road.
right.
While a lot of the villages getting a Cape Seal or something like that for all this. You know, like Bingham Lane with the recommendation was essentially a surface seal. So they're getting a surface seal, well, Bristol Lane's getting a brand new asphalt, new drainage, you know, kind of everything.
Whoever has
So-
access to the Excel spreadsheet that computes the distance, I mean, the other thing too is on proposal 5.0, your excess is almost $1 million in 37, whereas in 5.A, it's $127,000. So it's like $800,000 difference plus.
It's tight.
It's a big
I
difference.
think 3 and 4 are pretty tight too, in terms of like,
So it was only 5 that had the buffer.
Right.
Yeah.
right.
So, yeah, I mean,
Because it had such reduced costs of doing Bristol Lane because it was.
Correct, yeah,
Not the recommended solution.
correct.
I personally would have trouble voting for something that the engineers think isn't the best thing.
I agree.
I'm not a road expert, that's why we have it here.
I agree. I would, again, I live in Bristol, which is just a coincidence, and we keep talking about Bristol, but, you know, I also would not vote for something that somebody who isn't a road expert, you know, came up with. And I understand the desire to try to lower the cost as much as possible, get the most out of your dollar and that sort of thing, but I also think if it's going to be done at this point, we just need to do it right and try to get the most out of it that we can, and then when it gets to good, keep it there, you know.
I think if we could run some examples, for example, the difference between 1 mil and 1.8 mils is pretty significant. So if we ran a set of numbers at 1.5 mil, so the A, or the 5.0 has more money in it, but we still try to keep it at 8 years, then what would that special assessment have to be to make a 5.8 road plan?
Can Eric do that with what he put together?
I think Eric can do pretty much anything.
Eric, yeah.
I think I understand it. I think he could do that math fairly easily based on what he described at the last.
Maybe that's something we could ask Mr. McAlexander. Because we-
Essentially 5A cost, 1.5 mil, 8 years. What would that result in SAD?
Right.
And-
To be able to get the 5A, yeah.
To get the five.
But are you gonna, is the special assessment gonna be the same for all 3 special assessment areas, or is it gonna be more for the Bristol Road special assessment?
Yeah.
Because the assessment is $750 for every resident on any one of those roads.
Yeah, that,
It just depends on when it's assessed. Because it can't be assessed until you start the work.
Right.
yeah, that I would have a bit of a theoretical problem with. If you live on Bingham Road and you're getting a chip seal, I don't think you should be paying the same as, if we're going down the special assessment.
Yeah, I see what you're
rabbit
saying.
hole, right? Then
Yes.
Yeah, I think you got to differentiate them, which is, I mean, there's also a cost in managing this that Ken and our treasurer has
That's true.
to do, that we should understand if it's something more than insignificant. I don't know. But I would probably, if you were going to a higher SAD, I think it would have to be more directed at,
Who's in front of the,
but the way that's going to work out is that number's not going to be 1,000 then. It's going to be something a lot higher if you're trying to match the cost of the rehab to the SAD, you know,
Yeah.
directionally.
This was designed to try and be fair to everybody, even though one may not be getting
The
It's
same-
much benefit.
as much benefit out of the road. Not the roads will be passable, because the whole idea of trying to get them up to, what,
Eight.
5 or 6.
well, 5 or 6.
Yeah.
because if
But
you-
obviously, if we did that on Bristol Lane and the tributaries, that's going to go up to an 8 or 9. if we go, yeah. Or maybe even a 10, I don't know. Well, it's a 10 the day it's done.
It's going to be
and
10.
Yeah.
Year 0, it's going to be a 10.
Yeah,
So Bristol would bump up to an 8 or a 9.
a 10.
Or a 10.
You bring up
Or
the
10.
average everywhere, really.
Right.
When you average it out, the entire village map, you would, in theory, bring up the average.
The
everywhere.
average of everything, yeah.
And the question is, would a 1.5 mil have to be voted on? Or could this council pass the 1.5 mil with the special assessment and a fixed period of time?
Dedicated specifically to the roads. Sounds like no, but
I think that has to be voted on, doesn't it, if it's going to be specific?
No.
Or
What?
can council, I don't know, can
You
council do
can
that?
just you're talking about raising the millage 1.5, you can do that on Monday. That's step one, right?
Yep.
Okay, what's the next question?
could you,
How do we dedicate that to just the roads? I think that has to go to a vote.
I don't believe, you can't just, no, you can't just raise the millage, you can't raise the millage 1.5, so we're only going to spend this on roads for the rest of.
Right.
You
That would
can't
have-
tie the hands of their future councils to just doing that
The only way to do that would be in a vote.
in a vote in November on a
Correct.
ballot. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're still at square one, basically,
Yeah.
right?
Well, if we raise the millage to 1.5 for an 8-year period, and what's happening next year with the fire department and everything else, I mean, over the next years, our cost of living is going to significantly consume a portion of that. So if we don't dedicate it, but we properly manage it, we should be.
But as you were
able-
saying, it's tough to tie the hands then of council.
If it's an unrestricted
But
1.5.
you just mentioned a time limit on it. You just said, right? You can't.
That's right.
That's if it's on a ballot. Is that
But that
true?
would, maybe that time limit would apply to the special assessment amount.
I don't know. Because the assessment doesn't go down a ballot. That would be.
No,
a
it doesn't.
proposal.
Mm-mm. No.
And it is my understanding that special assessments can have a term limit.
A
Okay.
time limit?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, in fact, I think they have to have
Mhm.
time.
I think,
For
yeah.
example, like if the lifespan of the road is 20 years, you can't have a 30-year
Right.
special assessment. It has to be.
So my question then would be, if you're going to, if the council wants to go the special assessment route, are you just going to impose that upon all these people?
What, you got to have a meeting with those people.
And what if they reject it?
Yeah.
Then what do you do?
That was my next question.
Oh, okay.
The elephant in the room says, if any of this goes on a ballot, it gets rejected, what do we do?
well, again, the SAD
Yeah.
doesn't go on a ballot, right?
No, it does not.
Yeah. But we know that if we took out a loan letter, and even a bond, you are obligated to pay that bond, no matter what you have to charge in taxes. You're obligated to pay that, so that's automatic,
Yeah.
whether we like it or not. And if it goes on ballots and you lose, oh boy, here we go again.
Right, so what if we say 1.5 on the ballot, because we want it to be dedicated,
And that would be, yeah,
right? So 1.5 on the ballot, along with an SAD that we would impose on people, and it doesn't pass. What are we gonna do?
Then maybe we say, okay, Bristol Lane, you're not going to get your full rehab.
I think if the 1.5 mils doesn't pass, then I think whoever's on the council at that time has to relook at it. And they could decide, fine, we think we need to do this, and we'll just increase it 1.5 and we won't dedicate it. I mean, they could, all bets would be off, they could do whatever they
Right.
thought was best at that point in time.
Just something else to think about, if council impose, just does a 1 mil increase on Monday, and it starts July 1st. That's a year, that's a taxable year. If this goes on, if you're doing it a ballot issue, you don't collect, if it passes, until the following year. So there's a certain pot of money that
So
you will
you're
not
losing out a
have.
total year.
So
Actually, a year and a
some
half.
elements of these proposals might have to be reconfigured.
Well, no, they wouldn't though. None of the proposals, all the proposals assume that the tax increase starts next year.
Next year?
Yes, yeah.
All right.
I looked at that right before we came in tonight, just to be sure.
And this takes me back to Aaron's point of, at some point, you just need to be the adults in the room, and that we were elected to make a decision. And we, over the course of, well, I mean, when did we start this? 2 years ago or something, really. All the information that we as a council, last council and this council, and this committee have gathered, like the people, the residents don't understand all of this stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have the information, like, I think it's up to us to make the best decision for the residents, because we have the information. Like, if you just say, well, you know, we just want you to have a new road, and you're gonna have a 1.5 mil increase in the special assessment and whatever, I mean, I think that's, to me, that seems like a harder hill to climb than to.
You're just making a point, yeah.
Just bring it
Yeah.
to your attention is all.
Yeah, so
Yes.
to me, we have to have that, and knowing that whatever we decide is going to change in the future, but setting out that framework, agreeing on those three things and the framework around them, I think is important. I don't know. If we're going down a path where it's around 1.5 or 2 because we think the 5A, some combination close to 5A is the right answer, I'd rather see it voted on, and then if it gets turned down, it's going to be a tough decision for the council, but I would then been the one to vote it to increase it anyway, because I think we've got to get this done. But I would like to give the residents a chance with all, for those that want to hear it, all the information available that we have.
Kind of like what we have, what's outlined here is all the I wouldn't say all, but the majority of the information you would need to make an informed decision as a voter.
And I think it should be, I assume we can do this, but we could boil it down to 1 or 2 pages of what our final framework looks like, and
Yeah.
saying,
Oh, yeah.
we're going to
Yeah.
do an SAD, we're going to go to the ballot, we're going to do this or that. Here's what the 1 or 2 pager is. Here's why council supports that.
Yeah, and that could be part right in the newsletter.
Yeah, I think that's important. But I think on Monday, we've got to vote on what that framework looks like. Because
Aaron, are you talking framework for the 3 things, or framework for what we're going to do on Bristol and?
I think the first item on that framework is, because Bristol's the biggest decision.
Bristol,
But I
yes
mean,
or no?
to do the, yeah, but how yes or no? Are we going to do it
Are we gonna-
total?
Total or partial?
Partial,
And the second item is special assessment or no special assessment?
right?
Okay. And then the third item is the duration.
Yeah, and I think it's actually taking 5A, whatever 5 or 5A is, and coming up with
Right.
Yes.
the council's proposed framework.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it would end up looking like either 5 or 5A, or one of the, have that
Right.
level of detail. That would then be,
And then that would be sent out to the
I
resident.
think, if we voted on it to say that's what we support, then, and then we need to, because I think that has to be decided, if it's going on the ballot, guys remind me, it has to be decided at
August.
the August meeting, so
A July meeting,
July
because
meeting for
the
August.
deadline for the ballot word language is in early
we need
August.
to make a shot at it in June, so we can make sure we get it in July. We have to have the framework in June, so we could get it approved to go on the ballot in July.
So for Monday, could we have some Excel table that shows, okay, if it's 1.5 mils for 8 years and this special assessment, that equals the number we need with that much left over. If it's 1.4 for 9 years, I mean, should
It's
we?
possible, but I don't have a feel yet, based on where this group is on the SAD,
Pardon?
or I don't have a feel for whether this group is supportive of including an SAD or not. I know we're not
Okay.
voting today, but,
Let's talk about it.
yeah, I mean, that's, or the first point, what the group's thoughts are on Bristol. But maybe
Bristol.
those two things are together, I don't know.
Well,
I've made my statement on where I think we should follow with respect to the level of repair or fixes on Bristol. I would follow what the engineer suggests. That's my view.
The other question I had for you guys, I've heard sort of through the grapevine, I want confirmation, is if we do the lesser, it'll start showing wear or cracks, or is that what you were acting, reflective cracks or something?
Well, if you install any kind of pavement on a base or a surface that's got a bunch of cracks in it or fissures, frost action will cause the pieces underneath and the new pavement to move differently, and you will see what we call reflection cracking or reflective cracks. You will see the outline of the cracks in the underlying surface in the new pavement, and it will start during the first winter of service of the overlay, and within 2 or 3 years, essentially all the major cracks in the underlying pavement, you'll see them in the top.
But with worse subgrade soils, you may see those even
It'll happen quicker and
more severe.
More
yeah,
dramatic.
more
I can tell you
dramatic.
That's exactly what happened. We're 2 years into repaving the private lane. The shadow cracks have come. They were small shadow cracks before. They're small shadow cracks 2 years in. We knew, our paver told us, you will see it, it will happen, but that's the solution for a very low traffic road that we then seal
If
and
you
do some
can
other
develop
stuff.
or find the product that will prevent that reflection cracking, please let me be an angel investor.
Exactly, because so I can tell you like that. I mean, it's really important though too for the residents to know, because like our contractor said, you can't call me out here in 2 years and say that crack's back. It will be back. That's.
Which is why I was asking, because
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, I think I've made it pretty clear. I'm a proponent of do it right or don't do it at all. So I can't imagine us having all of this work done, the road's torn up, we go through all of this, and a year or two in, somebody is gonna say, what in the world?
Always happens.
We paid for all of this, we're paying a special assessment, we went through all this pain of this road construction,
Well-
and now there's cracks in the road. Like,
People
it
have
looks
short
the same
memories.
as it did before.
One
You
way to
know?
mitigate that is baking into an overlay project like that, baking in to the job one round of crack sealing in the following spring. So like the first, the worst and the biggest cracks that you pave over, those reflection cracks will appear first. And if you bake into the maintenance job, at least the first round of crack filling, it goes a long way to make the perception of the work a little better, and it also just makes how well it lasts and the quality of it. It's better if you can get the first round of maintenance in to deal with the reflection cracks. Everyone knows are coming. Address them.
Right.
You still get the people that be like, why is this road cracking already? Why are you fixing it already?
Right.
I got black marks on my new pavement, and we just spent all summer with the dust and debris and noise, and now
Right.
you're back at it already.
And now it looks bad,
Yeah,
because the
it doesn't
people
look like a
that,
big parking lot anymore.
right,
Yeah.
right. And the people that are gonna come and look at my house if I sell it are just gonna see cracks in the road that or whatever. I think that's part of it too, because people talk about the resale value of the house and all of that. Like, I just think, again, if we're gonna do it, like, it's gonna hurt no matter what, right? It's gonna be a pain, it's gonna be costly, it's gonna be stinky and dirty and noisy and difficult. Like you said, there's only one way in and one way out.
Or when they drive by in the middle of summer after a heat wave and they still see water in the ditches.
Right. Right. Like, well, I don't know why we would do it if we weren't gonna do it right.
It is to set expectations. If we did the more major rehab on Bristol Lane, it's still gonna crack. Not as quick as but you're still 2 or 3 years down the road, you're gonna have You
We're
guys don't
calling
need
for
to
a
crack
full,
seal.
we'd be calling for a full removal of all the asphalt on the road, part of the major one. So,
There wouldn't be any kind of first couple of year
There's no
reflection cracks.
shit.
Yeah, it would be for all intents and purposes a new pavement, and it would perform like a new pavement.
So it will take its own form of cracking, whatever that will be, depending on how good the contractor is.
But it's
Or the
not going to
base.
be something that would be expected to happen as quickly as it would for maintaining and overlaying an already damaged pavement.
and hopefully we'd be fixing all the 4 subgrade. We have money in there to cut those sections out as well. So, the fear sometimes is once you get into, if you take all the pavement off of a road like that, do those undercuts, do the escalate more
Well,
quickly.
that's,
That's a risk.
not
That's
to
what
get
we
into
did,
my
yeah.
issue, but that's why we did not do it on our lane, because the range of
Can
estimate
open up Pandora's box a little bit,
was, so, yeah.
Well, let me ask one other question before I forget, and that is, at one point in time, I thought that you guys needed, well, you guys have to do more engineering work, no matter what we do.
These are preliminary estimates. We looked at the road decently, but we didn't go through and
Right.
really nail it. Yeah.
And you need to start that by a certain amount of time in order for us to be ready to give out bids in, it was either December or January, I can't remember which, in order to have construction next summer.
Mhm.
So when is it that you need to have us tell you, do the engineering on these
I'm
roads?
gonna tell you yesterday. You know that. I'm telling you, we're designing roads right now for next spring already.
Okay, so do you need to know, like, by Tuesday, next Tuesday? I mean, is that,
I'm only gonna tell you the sooner the better. You know, 'cause we need to go out and take topo. If you want drainage improvements on roads, we need to know where stuff drains. Now, we have good information from some of the stormwater stuff we're doing, but we don't have actual physical topographic survey
to do your work, do you need to know whether it's the full rehab or a partial rehab?
I mean, if we were
At
doing
some point,
partial
yes.
rehab, if we were doing partial rehab, we probably wouldn't take full topo, I don't think. We might just take topo of the drains and stuff, where we don't know we're just doing drainage improvements, or we may not. We haven't really developed that yet, but full topo is always better, it's just expensive, to do. Go ahead, Ken.
Next question is, if there's a ballot proposal in November, whether, let's assume it passes, that's too late for.
You'd want to have something shovel-ready in that case.
If we don't know until November, then that really 25, 26 is really out of the question, isn't it?
Without having a shovel-ready
Yeah,
project,
it
you're
would-
right.
It would
Okay.
limit the amount of work you can get
Well,
done.
but we've got, I mean, I thought in all these proposals, the idea was to use the savings first, so we could
Yes.
start that, and I guess I also, I know we haven't decided on the ordering, but we could start on something we know there's no variable to, like Bristol
Like
Lane,
different road, you
Bingham
mean?
Road, and we could start there, use the savings to do that, get them to do that work, start them on that work in next week or August, whenever that would be, July, whenever that would be. And then when you get to November, know whether you pass or not, all that stuff. Because I think in each of these proposals, the timing was it wasn't to use the 2.7 at the end, it was to use it to begin
Right.
to.
Right, yes.
To wait till the taxes came in. And then, again, if the 1.5 didn't pass, then now you gotta call an auditor, and maybe you have done only a very small part of the roads.
The counter to what you just said is that earlier we talked about being south of 13 Mile being the most dire and then that needed the attention first. But if this is, we're changing that order a little bit if you're going to go with a ballot proposal.
I guess I thought I heard them the other way, that yes, it was worse, but it was better to attack the ones that were in better shape first.
I think, again, depending on what you
Before they
decide to do. If you
start
decide to do the full reconstruction, like we're talking talking about on Bristol side, then yeah, it doesn't matter if you wait now or a
Okay.
couple years. Attack the
They're
ones in
taking it all
better
off
shape.
anyways.
If you're going to do the preventive maintenance treatments, they
Yeah.
need to be done on pavements that are good enough condition to receive
Which
that
can
and
also
get
be
the
done
benefit of
quicker.
it.
Which means
Okay.
Bristol Lane, which means Bingham Road.
Bingham Lane,
Yeah.
which other one? Bingham Lane, Brooks Lane,
But
Yeah.
Brom,
Not
Brom
Brooks.
and Old Orchard are the four that have the
Right, okay.
surface seal type.
Okay.
And
if we
Coach
were-
Light and Old Stage could be spun up into concrete maintenance programs of any size, kind of
Okay.
pressing a button.
But if we were going down the lesser level on Bristol Lane, then sooner the better.
Correct.
To Ken's
Okay.
other point. So
Okay.
You're back to the real question here, which is what do you do?
Full or partial?
Yeah.
But those other ones would be a special assessment also. They would be a different special assessment.
Well, that doesn't, yeah, 'cause it really doesn't work in the that doesn't work in the special assessment district groups that you had, but it works in constructability groups. So there's a lot of variables with, I will just say that, there's a lot of variables with the SED proposal. While I think it's very intuitive, or I don't say intuitive, it's a
Logical.
good proposal. Yeah, very logical on how to share it. There are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of, well, if this work, does this work? And things like that. It's interesting, for sure. I hadn't seen that, and I actually brought it up to a couple people in my office that have done this a lot longer than I have, and they hadn't seen something like this either, mainly because there's so many moving parts. You know, what if this happens, what if this doesn't happen, you know, and things like that. And the grouping is tough, too. It doesn't really work with the constructability that we had kind of put together either.
Okay, so let's explore this a little bit more.
So like the constructability, you want to do all the surface seal items because there's one or two contractors in the Midwest, I would even say, that do that work. Okay, so they need larger projects in order to make it worthwhile for them to come up to a community and do the work. So you want to group all those projects into one
Okay.
project.
So they might
construct-
be in 2 or 3 special assessment districts.
It might be in 2 or 3 special assessments, exactly.
Is that
Yeah, if there were no
correct?
such thing as economies of scale or
I
those
don't know, or
constructability
did
issues.
he group it like that? So we got From is in SAD 2,
Yeah, I think we've broken it up into three.
Bingham Lane is SAD 2, Brooks Lane's not in this at all, and From is in SAD 2. So I guess all those are, say From, Bingham Lane, Old Orchard. I guess those are all in SAD 2. So I mean, I guess you could swap them around. So all those are SAD, and you'd have Shagwood and I think Reed Hollow are both.
Well, the idea being that, with,
HMA
you know,
resurfacing.
yeah.
So I guess SAD 2 kind of did that in itself. So that's
SAG
good.
2 is more or less the chip seal or whatever.
Is more of the preventative maintenance
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
roads.
SAE 3 as well, right?
Yes.
SAD 3, Bingham Road is it is an HMA resurfacing, but it's a bigger one, so you couldn't group it with all the other ones because
Right.
it in itself is a very large project, being a mile-long road. So essentially, you would do SAD 2 first, you know, just kind of flip-flop 2 and 1, or 2, 3, then 1, something like that. If you were doing the major reconstruction of the Bristols, that's what probably we would recommend.
So do SAD 2, 3, then 1.
2, 3, then 1, if you were doing the full reconstruction. How do they have that set up? Okay, for the SAD for, yes, that would be what we would think would be the better route to go.
From a sequencing point of view, yeah.
Yeah, in sequencing.
2, 3, 1.
And then with SAD 1, which would become SAD 3, that would then be a full rehab.
The full reconstruct, yeah. Bristol Lane. And the courts.
In the courts,
Can I
yeah.
just ask another question around that
Yeah.
specifically? So I understand that in your professional opinion, that's the best thing to do for that road, is the full rehab. That's where I think you're saying the most value for what you're putting in gets out of it. If we were to go down the other one, which is just, it's a grind and overlay or just an overlay?
we didn't even price out a rehab option because we didn't want to
Oh, okay.
I didn't see any better
seem like a
options.
recommendation.
That's the challenge you guys were kind of painted into a corner with respect to the existing pavement conditions, the soil conditions, the topography. It's the lower cost, lesser impact options aren't on the table anymore based on.
We came up, we being the.
Well, yes, the committee came up with a
advisory
2-inch
committee.
mill and fill with drainage improvements. That's
2-inch
what
mill and fill, right.
the committee took the Bingham Road model
Right.
and the kind of cost per lineal foot of road on that and just applied it to Bristol Lane.
And again, for my help, the reasons why that won't work, definitely going to have, so the same shadow cracking issue exists.
You don't have very much pavement. It wouldn't survive the process of doing the milling and the removing of the top 2 inches of the asphalt.
It would destroy the.
Correct. You would be in this situation, and this is a bad place to be, believe me, I've been there, where you start doing a mill and resurfacing kind of maintenance operation, and now you've destroyed everything that's left. And now you can't do that maintenance. But now we also have to, the plan was to expose the milled surface to local traffic, but now that's all busted up and there's crappy soft clay underneath it. Now we can't drive on it, and there's no money to build this because this was only a cheap extra money rehab that we've shoehorned in at the end of the fiscal year.
So we.
I don't want
say
that to
we,
happen
I wasn't
here.
part of the committee, but I'll put myself in it. We just kind of created this option.
Yeah.
Understood?
So what if you just, and going over top of it, I understand all this shadow
overlay?
cracking, just a pure overlay, no grind. Then we start to have some height issues.
Yes, on all the driveways. Yeah.
That's why that was never
I mean,
proposed.
it would require a localized reconstruct at every driveway to make those grades work. And
You got a lot of nice, well, I don't know how many, I didn't do a survey of how many, but there are a lot of nice concrete driveways. There's some brick driveways, I'm sure, as well. And all of a sudden, you have the road really going into, down driveways. Luckily, in those, you have larger properties, so it's not as apparent. When we do these in tighter neighborhoods, that's kind of our biggest no-no. They don't want to raise that grade too much because it just creates more drainage issues.
Yeah.
But you're going to see the reflective cracking.
And your concept, Lisa, that it would be a bad thing to see reflective cracking in 2 or 3 years. You would see reflective cracking before the first winter if you tried that. I mean, if you did just overlay, resurface what's there in the summer, by Thanksgiving, you would have residents calling and saying this road has failed because it's already cracked. Guarantee it.
Kurt and Dee, you were both on the committee where the option of doing selected rehab on Bristol Lane came about.
Yes.
Members of the engineering committee were there.
Yes. Well, we actually had a special meeting
with these guys.
with them, and with one of the members of the committee whose idea this was originally was there as well at the special meeting that we had with them to try and determine could we do this and this? And I can tell you that the one member of the committee whose idea this was is convinced that it's the best way to go. And it's mainly because of costs and the fact that, the road that we have there is 20 years old and it's in the same soil. I don't claim to no.
Well, I mean, it's really a 1 or 2 person decision
Yeah.
that created proposal 4, proposal 3,
Right.
and proposal 5.0.
Right. Right. Now, the committee was asked to come up with 5 proposals. It wasn't like saying this is the perfect proposal or anything like this. It was asked to come up with 5 proposals for this council to review, and that's what it did.
Do you think this was forced to make number 5?
No.
No, I don't.
It was really a legitimate
That person
option.
believes this is the best
That
option.
person believes, if he was here today, he would tell you that proposal 3 is by far the best,
And mostly because of the cost.
Correct.
mostly because of the cost. he would tell you that, I'm convinced he would say that he's, if you read his proposal, he's saying, I mean, he's got all sorts of arguments in terms of like it would take 2 or 3 rotations, like 60 years to make up the difference in the cost, and it's $2.4 million. It's a lot of money, the difference. But I'm not a road person, and I don't know what the best solution is. I really don't. I don't know what the best answer is. I do know that, I don't want to do this and have 1 year from now find out that we made a huge mistake and that we have to redo the whole thing. But this one person is absolutely convinced that that's the best way to do it.
Well, and this one person who I totally respect, and I'll get with you, is, an engineer, whatever, but he's not a road engineer. And so, there's a difference. It's not his expertise. So I mean, he's one person, so I would not feel comfortable to say we went with this other option that a resident came up with and just sort of, we didn't listen to our experts, we listened to this person and maybe end up in a bad spot.
Will he be here Monday?
I don't know. I could ask him, but
I feel like you owe him. You guys all put in a ton of work to this, so I don't want to gloss over it.
no, every proposal
I guess
is incredible.
I hadn't realized that there was. I knew it wasn't their first choice. I didn't realize it was. What I'm hearing is they're saying
Don't do it.
That's different than what I understood.
I mean, if you,
Right.
so he just took a model from another road and just
Yeah.
kind of, I mean, we can put together an estimate, we will caveat it, of course, because we don't, again, it's not what we believe, but to be more true to a 2-inch mill, because I don't think the numbers are right either. I don't think you can just take, well, this road is this, and this road, and so we're going to apply that factor here, because there's a lot of different things.
So you
that
think
go.
proposal 5.0 and 5.A will come closer together financially if you do the actual numbers on Bristol Lane?
Not significant. I just
Not
don't-
significant?
Not as significant, I wouldn't say that much closer together. I think the numbers are a little off, and there's a couple assumptions that I think maybe were misconstrued during the discussions, such as we had always said, as we get further along in our design, we can reduce the contingency down. He just took the contingency down, right, saying, oh, well, it's going to be down. At this stage, the contingency, for cost estimating purposes, should be at that 25%. That's where it should be, because we haven't gone through and done topo, and as we go down and do detailed design, we can reduce that contingency at that point.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. So in all these proposals, he has showing 10% contingency on this. That's what we recommend at final design, not at preliminary conceptual type spot where we're at right now. So that's one thing where I think these numbers are a little bit low.
Right.
And I also think they're low because you just took a idea from Bingham Road, which again, that Bingham Road preventative maintenance model didn't include any of the under drain stuff that we talked about, just a very small component of miscellaneous drainage improvements, which was lower on Bingham Road because Bingham Road already has a lot of drainage on it, whereas Bristol Lane has nothing.
Yeah,
So that
it was higher there because it needs more.
Yeah, so that number is low, assuming we'll approve. So we can put something together. It'll be, it won't be, well, if you get like one, it might be like 1.3, 1.4. It'll still be significantly lower than the 2.6 or whatever we had proposed, but.
But again, you believe would you even, if we told you to go out and bid a 2-inch mill?
We'll do what you want us to do. I mean, we're working for the
Because I
village.
heard it was going to fail.
Well, I'm certainly not going to stamp a letter that guarantees you're going to get 20 years of flawless service life out of that overlay.
It's
We
not what
wouldn't
you guys
expect that.
recommend.
Not what I
But would it
recommend,
get
but
10?
we've also
Would it get
done many
5?
projects on things that we haven't recommended because councils decide to move in the direction of their budget constrained or things like that. It happens. It's not like it's not gonna be the first time.
Okay,
When I'm out there, I've recommended to clients some things that didn't work and needed to get fixed immediately a couple times in my career, and my feelings are still hurt from it. When I stand out there on Bristol, all I see are costs and problems that are going to happen during construction, and what I keep looking for are other options, and they're just not there. I would recommend strongly that you avoid cheapening out on the rehab that
And
you do there.
you don't, if we told you we had $1.3 million to spend on that road, you would have trouble coming up with options.
If there were $1.3 million, we could come up with an efficient, effective way to spend your $1.3 million, depending on what you're looking for, and what are your priorities. We can certainly do that. That's what we do. But
On Bristol Lane, I'm talking
Yeah.
about Bristol.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like,
absolutely.
We could isolate our drainage improvements a little bit more. We've already, our assumptions are that 50% of the road gets under drain and another 30% ditch clean out. If we go through and do our detailed design, that number may come down a little bit. These are just broad assumptions based on our drive-throughs, our looking at Google Earth images and seeing where stuff is. But as we get more into it, we know, okay, well, actually, there's only a drainage issue here and here. So that's really where we need the drainage improvements. And all these numbers but in my experience, numbers typically go up. So that's why that 25% contingency is I feel very strongly about that, because I was just going through it today. We're putting a final set of plans out for the sidewalk project in Beverly Hills, and just time after time, sheet after sheet is just, we forgot. We need to include this, we need to include this, we need to include this. These little teeny things, and they just add up and add up and add up, and they're not in your original conceptual design or your conceptual estimate. These little things that you just find every single nook and cranny of every road.
So we're not ready to do anything on a ballot with any firm numbers until you rework these numbers.
Well, you don't do that until
No,
you
that's-
way down.
That's not
way
typical,
down
yeah.
the
I mean,
Yeah.
but I can say that if you have money, that our designs don't go bad. So if you wanted to say, okay, we think that we want to do these roads first, these are going to be our proposal. If you want us to put together contract documents for it, that'll still be good next year. We may have to tweak them a little bit and change some language or something like that, but those are still good.
The cost is
The
up.
costs change,
The
but
cost
the
goes
the
up.
plan
Yeah,
itself.
but the plan
Right.
itself, what we're giving to you, say, you can put these out to bid. You say,
Right.
we're not ready, this didn't pass, this SAD didn't pass, or this millage didn't pass, let's try it next year. Okay, everything passed, are these still good? You give us them back for 10 hours, we'll fix everything up, and then boom, you can send them back out.
Right, but we're never going to have, we're not going to be in a position where where you guys say, this is the exact cost, and we go to the people for this exact cost.
We're not there yet on
Right,
any of these
you're
segments.
not,
So we
I mean,
need to
there's,
know.
At the
Right,
end, we'll
there's
give you
too
our
many-
final estimate based on
All the
going through
specifics.
everything, and again, this has 31 items in it, most of these estimates. We'll be at around 50 probably when
right.
we give you the
But
final.
they're still estimates.
They're still estimates, and we pride ourselves on, looking at all the other bid tabs that are out there for all the other projects, similar projects, so that our estimates are, on target. We don't like to be the low bidder on
Right.
these jobs.
Right, that's something I guess I just wanted to ask you about, because I'm hearing it differently tonight than I heard it before, and maybe it's just me, but my recollection was you guys told us that, when you give an estimate, the worst thing that can happen in your estimate is that it's too low. You get halfway done and you find out that the estimate you gave us was too low, and so now there's a shortfall. And so I thought that the contingencies were maybe high. Okay, and now you're telling me that the contingencies are, I think I'm hearing you say that the contingencies could be accurate. Am I?
As one goes through the design process, the variables in the scope of work and what the costs are going to be for that, the variable costs get smaller and smaller as the design gets more detailed, and all of the little things that Brad was talking about the costs get identified for it. So the contingencies at the end of a detailed design are going to be relatively low. Right now, everything is conceptual, so the contingencies or variable costs are proportionally higher.
But you are correct. The worst thing we can do is give you say, this is what we think the budget is, and for it to be too low. That's really the worst thing we can do.
Right, because I was under the impression, just after our little sub-meeting, that there probably was some wiggle room in the numbers. And now I'm under the impression that there may not be any wiggle room. That the numbers, were made to be higher so that in case, so that we wouldn't have a problem later on. And
We don't want to be artificially high too. So there's a give and take here. We want to be conservative, but we don't want to be high so that you don't want people want to do the job because they're astronomical. So as we go through design now, again, these preliminary designs are more detailed than I normally do a preliminary design. We had a little more time, we've had a little more effort. Could the 25 go down to 20? Maybe. We do have some items in there that we just put kind of some, but again, the worst thing we can do is be too low. We do not want to be too low.
If you have something out for bid that you think is going to cost $1 million and it comes back 1.9, Brad and I have some explaining to do,
Yeah.
and it's a problem for everybody.
So I would never say they're artificially high. And that's where I think during our discussion and the explanation of the process of the contingency going down as we go through detailed design may have got misconstrued as there's wiggle room in it. There's not. As we get more detailed, we get more items, but we're also more confident in what is out there, as much as we can be in an underground project, which is why we still want, at least a 10% contingency in there. But a lot of the unknowns surface that we can see, culverts that, we didn't see that culvert, that needs to be removed, or that needs to be fixed, it's busted, or this, we need more ditch clean out than we thought because we just did a real scan by. Now we've gone through and did actual topo, and that number's increased. We're more confident that our quantities that we have in there aren't changing too much during final design. Right now, beyond, I know how long the road is and how wide it is and how thick I want to put on asphalt, the quantities can change for sure.
The level of specificity and the quantity estimates there aren't any more complicated than it's this long and this wide and this thick.
That's a little different than I understood it. That would tell me that we probably incorrectly reduced the contingencies too far in all these proposals.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm surprised.
That's what stood out to me in this, was the contingency was just dropped 15%.
Yeah. I kind of explained what Jim was doing and he kept, what's it going what does this cost? What does this cost? And then, so he could then have a fixed sum that then he could apply numbers to. That's where he was going. Okay, how low can I make this go? And now let's apply that throughout. And that's where Jim was coming from. They may be too low, they may be too high. Probably a little bit on a low spot. But he was trying to save money as much as he could
Right.
with the scenario he was putting together. To kind of answer your question, they had to come up with a certain set of variables and a certain set of numbers to start with. And that's the numbers that they took. Were they going to give us, well, if you did the millet rate at 1.2 or 1.3 or 1.4 or 1.5, they didn't do that. They purposely took, we're going to take this number and this number and this number and apply that throughout. So if we want to go back and, okay, put this number, then put this number, then they can do that because they've already built the model. But at that point, then,
Well, the bottom line of what we have to write the check book for on proposal 3, 4, 5, 0, and 5A are wrong, is what you're saying.
No, I think they're wrong. No.
Just saying they're not the same estimates you had.
They're not the same as we have.
Yeah.
No.
like,
Each of them are estimates.
No.
What should we vote on? Ours or yours?
I can speak for myself. I'm voting with the professionals.
But you're only really doing, I
That's-
mean, again, this is just the framework.
I mean,
None of,
right.
like, until they go out and do the detailed engineering and we go bid it, we don't really know what it's gonna.
Which is why I started out the way I started out with speaking about this.
Yep.
Like, these are not, these are just proposals, they're a ton of work, amazing, incredible work. But it's not like we can just pick one up and hand it to them and say, okay,
Here
go
you
do
go.
this.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna take a little bit from everyone, things are gonna change, you guys are gonna find out more.
And it's gonna take 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So until you actually know what all this is.
And
really
if we do
gonna be.
Bristol Lane last, yeah, like, a lot could change.
Right.
Right? So it's a moving target, and I think that that's very uncomfortable for us.
How do you
Because-
vote on a moving target?
Well, we're not really voting, though. We're talking about, we're going to talk, I mean, I guess we're talking about voting on what a framework would be. That's really what we need to vote on, is the framework of, we're going to start now, we're going to engage them now on the first part. It's going to be, we're going to go to the voters and ask for some mill.
Yeah,
or
but what's some? What to ask for?
Well, you're gonna make
What is
it,
it
we gotta make
for?
an estimate.
You gotta make an estimate.
1.5, 2,
What do you want it
whatever
to
it
be?
is. We're gonna include SAD or not, that's the stuff we should be voting on. We could sit here for 6 more months and try to figure out whether it's gonna cost 2.3 or 2.1 million to do Bristol Lane or whatever the number is. You would just be talking to ourselves, because until we get to their next level of design, we're not going to know. So I think we should be putting together that framework and start, as we talked about, probably starting on the, north, on the north of 13 now, if that's what everyone thinks. And that will also allow us to get a couple things done and see how the estimates are panning out.
If we did special assessment district number 2, and I'm just calling it that just because,
Yes.
if we did those roads first, do you need to do the updated, what is it you guys do, the updated
Estimate.
Analysis framework.
Design.
analysis, survey, whatever, for that as well? I mean, do you need to start on that right away?
Actually, for those roads, we would need to do stuff for drainage improvements. So we need to survey for drainage improvements. But for the Cape Seal and the mill and overlay, we can do those relatively quickly on plans. So those don't take as long. It's when you get into the major reconstruction. Again, there's risk with everything. Okay, we don't do topo on all these projects, and we try and take shortcuts to get things done more cheaper, essentially. We can do that. We've done it before, and things have worked out. We've done it before, and we've got nothing but problems. So that's the discussion that we need to have on what are your expectations? What do you want from us? How do we want to go through this? We can show you different sets of plans and how they go. We can give you the pros and cons. We can give you estimates both ways, and we can have a discussion on how you want. We'll tailor it to what you want to do. Do we need full topo for a Cape Seal project? Probably not.
Probably not.
They're painting the road essentially, right? So we don't need to know what the grades are. The grades are going to be what the grades are going to be when they're done. Now, to do drainage improvements, yes, we probably need to do some. So is that a matter of walking it one day after it rains and pointing out the areas that are bad and say, okay, we need selective topo in these areas to figure out how to drain it, and that's it? That might be a good solution too, just do that. So again, we haven't gotten to that point yet, I guess is what I'm saying.
If we were to vote on Monday to request that you guys to prepare the engineering, to start preparing the engineering for special assessment district number 2, and also to ask our council to start preparing a ballot proposal for a millage increase. I mean, maybe that's all we can do.
But how much of a millage increase?
Well, I mean, I don't think he would have to know the amount to start.
Well, if it's going to be on the ballot for November, we have to know it
In
by
August.
August.
Right, but.
July.
Or July, rather, yeah.
July, but we could, I mean, he could prepare the proposal and just leave X mills until,
That's true.
we come to a decision.
Can you say, Ken, for no longer than X amount of years?
Yes, you could put, you
So
have,
then if your millage is enough, then you can always, and you have enough money going for, you could always cut it short,
Right, that's my hope.
Yeah.
right?
Well, that was one of the in 5A or 5 was that, okay, we're going to end up with X amount
Right,
more than we would in
right.
5B or 5A.
If the millage is only for the roads in Special Assessment District 2,
Well, the millage would be for all.
Village and for everybody.
okay.
The millage would be for all the roads. So then the issue is like, is it just gonna be a millage, in which case it's gonna have to be higher, a lot higher, especially if we're doing the full rehab. Or is it gonna be a millage and a special assessment, in which case the millage rate could be lower, but then we have to do special assessments? All I'm trying to figure out is like what we have to do
For Monday.
for Monday, because Monday's gonna be here in like 2 or
Right.
3 days.
Can we just pause 1 second? Joe, did you, no? Okay. Yes,
You need to make sure you collect enough money to do what you want to do.
right.
Right.
Yes.
And if the costs of that start coming in lower, which we hope, again, that's our full intent, to give you a budget number to go from, and then come under that. That's really what we want to do. Through either design, through, again, doing a little bit more economical engineering type by not doing full topo and everything, to get those numbers down so that you can either cut your millage short a year, or, you know, if you just said, listen, we're just going to do Bristol Lane as a mill and fill, we just don't have the money, and then we end up going through everything and say, hey, look, we're getting more, you know, we're saving a lot of money here. We may have more money at the end. If we don't have enough, maybe you say, okay, hey, Bristol Lane folks, you want an SAD for the rest? We have this much. I guess there's flexibility in that, as long as you collect enough money off the start.
If we put up for vote a big enough amount, people are going to want full explanations.
And there is. I mean, I think we've got 60
There's a lot,
pages
yeah.
of full explanations.
Yeah, but if we don't have enough, then this is going to happen. And that, as you're saying it, so how do we communicate that?
Here, let me mention this. This 2023 values is what we had in the newsletter, right? 1 mil generates about $195,000. So 2024, it's probably around 200. I think it's safe to ask, or safe to assume, that 1 mil is going to bring in $200,000 if it passes. So that, I mean, when you compare the cost of the road projects to 1 mil, a 1 mil tax increase, you're obviously not covering your full cost with just 1 mil. It's something to think about.
So then the constituents says, all right, if I pass one, what else is coming next?
We don't know.
I can't speak for what might be in people's minds.
I know, none of us can. And that's why
Right.
without having a definitive plan out there, if we put out a millage increase for vote, I think we're doomed for failure without communicating exactly what's going to be done for that amount of
And what
money.
you're saying is we don't do anything.
No, but maybe we don't do it on the ballot.
The whole idea of the ballot would be that money then specifically is for roads.
It's earmarked exactly for roads.
It's earmarked strictly for roads, so then council can't take that money and do it for something else.
Well, and that's part of your answer when people say, you know, what is this for? It's for roads.
It's for roads.
And here's the cost. Here's what we can raise with 1 mil. This is why we're asking for 1 mil. We realize it's not going to get you to the top, but it'll be a major contribution to that cost. That would be the explanation I would provide.
And also part of this proposal too is the idea of getting a $2 million
SIB?
loan.
Yeah.
And therefore, that covers the initial costs, with the payment being the money that we collect in taxes. So we've got the money to do the roads right now. We pay off the
Some of
loan.
the roads.
Some of the roads. Well, it's going to be all of them because that will
Eventually.
be over X amount of time. So then you have that money to use, but you're paying it off in 10 years.
I guess I'm missing something
So
because
could you
1
do,
mil.
so could you do, I mean, if you wanted to do proposal 4, just make sure you collect enough money with the infrastructure bank in your back pocket if you need it.
Exactly, yeah,
But
And if
for-
things start coming in lower, then you won't need it.
exactly.
You know,
You can pay it off faster or, yeah.
Well, this goes back to one of the initial questions. 2 questions paramount were Bristol Lane, yes or no? Should we do full or not? And special assessment district. So going to proposal 4 begs the special assessment district.
It's an interesting technique.
51.
There's just a lot of moving parts to it.
Yes.
That's the only worry. And look at how much discussion we've had, you know, about different things tonight. Imagine if this goes out into an SAD and you guys, it's a lot.
I mean,
It's a lot. It's not that it's undoable. And I think it's a neat idea.
But it's complicated.
It's
But it's
complicated.
complicated.
And the other thing to consider, which I don't know would change anybody's mind, is we don't have like a finance department here. So when you're talking about this special assessment, starting it here, and then this loan, and this, and the taxes, and, you know, we basically have one person
Yeah.
that
And
will
you
be.
get- And you get into the equity of it too. Like, why am I paying this, and this person, like, the person that's on the corner of 13 and Bristol Lane, is paying the same as the person that's at the end
Yeah.
of Bristol Lane, even though that person only uses this much and this person uses this much, you know?
So if it's up
Like,
for a
you know,
vote.
Yeah, all
because
that,
of
all
our-
that comes into play.
That's the biggest issue in my mind, is the split contingency that we have.
People on Bristol Court why are they paying the same as the person on Bristol Lane, who has to use Bristol Lane and Bristol Court? The person on Bristol Lane is paying for the person on Bristol Court too, because they're in the same, so it's like,
Which I think-
you'll get into all those potentially.
Right, I mean, I think that's where we're gonna be headed when we start splitting public roads and private roads. People are gonna start going down that then. Then they're gonna say, well, I don't drive on that court. Why am I paying for your court? I never drive on that court.
They're already saying
Or,
that.
or why are, like
They're
you said,
already saying that.
or better yet, the private roads that are off Bingham Lane,
That's,
they don't have to pay a special assessment, but they're driving on Bingham Lane every single time they go in and out of their driveway. So then, like, how is that fair to them?
And that's why the assumption was they could do it by square foot or road footage, or you have this many people, we're going to divide it up by that much. So therefore, it became fair to everybody. Because if you had 10 feet is on the road, well, you're only paying for 10 feet.
Might as well.
It wasn't fair. So that's why they took this whole, again, one of the contingencies was, it's 1,000 feet long, divided by this many residents, there it is. It's going to cost this much, divide, boom, there you are. That's how
That makes
that
total
money.
sense to me.
Yeah.
Personally, that makes total
Yeah,
sense.
and that's how it
But I'm
was.
saying, it's the same as people saying, I live on a private road,
Yeah.
I don't want to pay.
and that's
Right?
what they're
Yeah.
already saying.
And the
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
on our roads are saying, like you said, why do I have to pay from my house to the end of Bristol Lane? I don't drive down there. So when you open that box of fairness, what's fair, people are gonna just come out of the woodwork with, this is not fair.
And-
This is
It's
not
going to
fair.
happen, though.
Yeah. And my answer to that is move.
Some people,
Or said another way, there's a benefit to having good roads in the
Right.
village, to your home
To your
value,
home
no
value.
matter where
Right.
it's at.
I mean.
So that's how I would,
Because the argument about
same thing you
move,
just said.
you know.
You said it more directly.
I was going to be more succinct, yes.
Why don't we just do a special assessment for each road for $42,000 to $48,000, and if the people don't like it, then they can move?
Yeah,
mean,
just
like-
what, yeah, what,
Because that's really what it costs to do the road.
Right.
Yes.
It's like, I just don't think you're gonna get 52% of the people to vote for something that they get extremely minimal benefit for, if the people who are actually getting the benefit are not gonna put in anything extra.
That's right.
I just don't think it's gonna happen.
I agree completely with you, Kurt.
Yeah, when Ken first forwarded me this, is that there's an SAD option, I was immediately thought, I'm like, $40,000 people are gonna want to, because I know that's the running rate for a home on a road.
Right.
yeah.
You know, it's around there. So when I saw this, I was like, this is
It's
interesting.
peanuts.
I haven't
I
seen
mean,
this
it's-
before.
it's not like-
But
This is
it's
getting
top-
away from.
Right, all right, I'm gonna,
Let's just
I'm
call
gonna
for.
call for a break. Just to give everybody time to get up, stretch your legs, use the restroom. It's, uh,
9:15.
it's 9:18. We'll be back by 9:25.
Yeah. And this is why we needed to do this.
I'm afraid we're going to have the same conversation.
We may, we may,
So,
Yeah.
we may.
yeah.
Go back, go break.
921.
9:25.
By 9:25.
I thought it would be clear,
Yeah.
and it turned out the
I don't know what is
It's not for me, and so I'll be quiet, this one.
Okay, I'm going to get us started again.
I will find out.
All right.
Call the meeting back to order, I guess. So I really, I want to try to wrap this up by 10, just for everybody's sanity at the latest. So I think we do need to go back to at least the framework, as you called it, like Bristol, total or partial, SAD, no SAD, duration. So let's start with Bristol. Total or partial. You all know I feel strong about doing the total reading, not just doing it right. Does anybody feel any differently?
I might, because of the cost.
I would like to, on Monday, hear from the gentleman that put that estimate together, if possible.
Ken will invite him to come.
Yeah. I'm more on the side of doing the whole thing after we've continued to talk about it, doing the full reconstruction, but I'd also put it at the back end, and I think we should say that's our intention, but we'll leave some flexibility to it, because I think it would be, I think in the way we're talking about ordering, it would be at the tail end of the project.
Right.
And we'll have more information then. So maybe we end up saying it's our intention to do that, but we're also going to remain somewhat flexible depending on how the numbers come out for the first 3 years of this.
Yeah.
That would probably be, absent hearing from him on Monday, that would be where I would
Yeah.
stand.
And also with the understanding, too, that if it's an SAD area, you don't start paying until till
Right.
work starts.
Right,
Right. Yep.
right.
And that number might have to be flexible. I think we should say what we think it's going to be,
Yeah.
but that can be
Went from
flexible
500 to
depending on,
1,000.
Yeah.
depending on how everything else shakes out and what the estimate looks like at that point. I know it's less firm than everyone would like it to be, but I think we've got to keep it at a framework level.
Okay, Demi, do you have an opinion on partial or full?
Well, I'm of the same mindset, if you're going to do something, do it right. But I also am a financial nerd, like to keep things, and I just still worry about our public safety. So if we have all this money going to roads, and then we're going to turn around and next year have a huge amount that we need to pay for public safety, which I think is really important, then maybe we do need to think about only doing partial. So, that doesn't really answer your question. I realize that, because, I don't know. And plus, now we're talking partial. We're over into 2028. And by 2028, what is Bristol going to be like? Granted, yeah, we're going to do the whole thing. We'd have to do the whole thing in 2028, because you were saying there's no way you could do a partial in 2028, right? Because you're saying there's no way to do a partial
You can't let
in
Bristol sit
2025.
long enough.
Yeah.
No, if a road that's in poor condition now, it's going to be in poor condition next year too.
Right. So, but what I'm saying, so there is no choice, partial or full. You've got to do it full, because your opinion is full.
Well, my recommendation for
Your recommendation.
what the village should do is going to be a thorough rehabilitation
Right. Right.
of the pavement and soil materials on that route. The village doesn't have to do that, and we could help with a less rigorous alternative that gets chosen. And we can help if you've got $100 or $1,000 to spend on it. We can help spend that as effectively as possible, and that's what we do.
Right, but then you have to answer to the village if you have a road that, like you were saying, by November of that year, you're going to start seeing the
Shadow cracks.
the shadow cracks, and then you have to do the, the overlay. So, I mean,
I wouldn't have to answer to the village. I would
I
tell the
know.
village in advance, this is what's going to happen.
right, well, we
Right.
would have to answer to the village and answer to the homeowners, and then also answer to the fact that, how we came up with our ideas. So I think we all have to be really set and sort of have all the same verbiage that we're gonna come up with for everybody. So I don't know.
Right, because at that point, we would be, you'd have to say almost, we declined the professional's recommendation,
Right.
and we just decided on our own.
Well, then why did you pay them for all this time to come in for the last 2 years, and then you're not gonna take their advice? So,
So, I don't know.
What if
We seem split on it.
What if we did this? Okay, on Tuesday, right now, or Monday. Right now, I'm just concentrating on like, what do we need to do on Monday? Okay, so I can go home, not miss my bedtime. We vote to start the attorney on drafting the tax proposal for November, leaving blank for now the number. Okay, number 2, we direct our engineers to start whatever engineering it is that they need to do on SAD 2, so that we have that ready and so that we don't miss out on another construction season because we didn't start that soon enough, and that we try to determine by when we have to do a special assessment hearing for SAD 2 so that we can get that done before July 2025 taxes are done. And we also then try to get Eric to rerun the numbers. I think I heard 1.5 mil for 8 years.
And then what would the special assessment have to be to reach that 5
I
point?
think maybe you want like $750 SAD for 2 and 3, and then there's going to be a bigger, much bigger number for SAD 1, the more expensive one. Does that make sense as a way to do something on Monday?
I agree with that, and then in the following, with the goal in the following meeting to have a 1 or 2 page overview of where we ended up.
Right. Right.
We can't do that by Monday.
Right.
But I think that I agree with
Does that make-
being the steps.
So you're talking kind of to explain that what's going to be on the ballot proposal, because the ballot proposal can only be 150 words.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about whatever supplemental we're going to provide to residents
Yeah.
to say, we're asking you to vote for this. Here's
Here's why.
our
Here's
framework
the
and how we think this is we're going to use the 1.5, the SADs are going to get implemented, the type of repairs we're going to do, all that. We need this next set of information to do that. We would have that together for the following meeting.
So let me just clarify, each SAD would have its own individual amount
Yes.
Right, I mean, they have to be,
as we go.
right, I mean, like, for example, you couldn't do the SAD hearing for Bristol Road until you're about to start the work on Bristol Road. You can't like have it and store it up and then not use it for 5 years. So that hearing wouldn't even be until several years down the road. But the SAD hearing for the roads we're going to do, we decided to do first, would be the first one. And you know, my understanding is that there's a time period, there's a lag between when you start that process and when you have to have it completed. Like, we can't just have that next week or next month.
Right.
It takes a while to do, and so you want to have that started so that if that's the way that the council ultimately decides to go, that we haven't missed the window for doing the first one, which would relate to the roads that we hope to do next summer. Okay?
But you're advising everybody of the 3 SADs that you're advising them that they are going to have a
Yes, I think that would be,
In the two-page proposal,
I think
right?
that would be in the two-page proposal, is that that's the plan, okay? I mean, it might not work out that way. I mean, like, these guys could come back and say, hey, we found this way that we can do this,
I love the
these first
expression.
roads for, like,
I was just waiting to see what was coming next.
they could come back and say, oh, it's $500,000 less, than we thought it was. It's not gonna happen,
Right.
but it's, I mean,